and welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Noémie Hermeking and I am joined by Furkan Karayel, keynote speaker and book author. Would you like to tell a little bit something about yourself, Furkan?
Thank you so much, Dr. Naomi. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Furkan Karayel and I'm connecting from Dublin, Ireland today. So from a very grayish sky, best regards from here, from Dublin. I'm the author of the book called Inclusive Intelligence, and I deliver interactive diversity and inclusion workshops and action-oriented diversity and inclusion workshops for organizations based in Europe or different part of the world. So that's me in a nutshell. And how about you?
Okay. Well, I'm an inclusion and diversity officer close to Munich, actually in Niederpöcking in Bavaria. I'm also an anthropologist and an intercultural trainer. And well, the topic of today will be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Do people actually need to change to find a job? What we did last time is that basically Furkan and myself, we will talk a little bit about this subject first. We will talk about our ideas, but we are very much interested as well in your stories. So after a little introduction, we invite the audience to actually come to the stage. So basically you just have to, go onto that little react button and just raise your hand, and then by clicking on that icon, we actually know that you would like to share your story with us. So of course it's only an invitation, but I just wanted to say all of this before we start. So let's go back to our quote. Maybe some of you are familiar with this quote. It's actually a quote by Oscar Wilde. Maybe also because you actually live in Ireland now. Some of you, or probably most of you, know that Oscar Wilde was a renowned Irish author and poet. And so if you ask yourself, what does it mean, be yourself, everyone else is already taken? What is your perspective? How do you interpret this quote, Furkan?
I'd like to say happy St. Patrick's Day, first of all. Yesterday was a big celebration here in Ireland. I think this quote feels so close to my heart by saying be yourself and everyone else is already taken. It gives the liberation of unchaining yourself from all the perception and expectation, anticipation from all the people set for you. And on the other side, it gives the courage to define and understand your own values. For example, honesty is one of my core values, and this is something that is on the top of my head and in the lenses that I see the world through, whatever I am doing, even if I'm talking to a client or meeting with a friend. So honesty is something that is so close to my heart. And seeing this in the workplace is also encourage others to be who they are in the work and also outside. Can I share a story about this?
Of course, please go ahead.
Okay, in a very short description, I'll tell you the story of me, 13-year-old Furkan, in Istanbul, in Göztepe, sitting with her dad and uncle. So I was preparing an English magazine to improve my English skills. Still improving, to be honest. So I was showing them what I have done, and both of them were so happy for me. Oh, Furkan, you have done a great job. It includes a lot of news from tech and news around the world, and tech was my passion. And later on I worked in tech industry for 10 big years as a software engineer. So it was kind of like a little steps for me coming out as a person in the world. And my uncle later on commented that, Furkan, I know that you're a smart girl, intelligent, talented, blah, blah. But have you seen any woman in the leadership positions of big, large organizations here in Turkey that they are wearing headscarf like you do? Do you think you can do it? Would they choose you really? And on the other side, why are you giving people the opportunity to limit your employment? So that is something you should keep in mind, Furkan. And it really hit me like a truck, and I thought of it and I said, like, yes, I haven't seen any woman who looked like me in the leadership positions of like any companies. And what does it mean? Does it mean that do I need to change to get into a job? And do I need to really fit in? What should I actually, keep in mind? And my dad came and he commented, Furkan only can work in one company at a time. And if the organization is not happy with how does she look, how does she think, how does she contribute, then it's not a good company for Furkan at all. So it's a win for Furkan, not a lose for Furkan. So this gave me the opportunity to see, okay, does it really mean that I need to change for a company? And the perception changes from society to society. For example, growing up in Turkey, especially for your first job, the society push you to change in order to find a job that's your expectation or your ideal company that is kind of like accepted. On the other side, my adulthood time I spent in Ireland, wasn't most of the case the first thing that comes up. But growing up in Turkey, that was something that the society really pushed you. On the other side, I would like to ask, like, how long can you walk in the shoes of others? If you change, if you try to fit, if you change your behaviors, you do the things that you don't do in order to get a job, but then how long can you actually do it? I know I spoke too much, but I'd like to ask you, Naomi, what about your story? What do you think of this quote?
Well, actually, I'd like to continue the talk that you just finished. You said, oh, how long can you actually walk in the shoes of others? I mean, that's really the question, I think, what is at stake when we do not fit in, right? Because at the end, it might be, it might have some repercussions on your emotional or on your mental well-being, right? It's not about being tolerated. I mean, nobody wants to be just tolerated, right? We want to be in a job where people celebrate you, basically, right? Mm-hmm. So, we can see that there are a lot of cuts as well in this diversity realm, but still at the end, I think, it is very important that people actually have the opportunity to embrace, their uniqueness, because that's how I interpret Oscar Wilde's quote. But at the same time, even though I think that it is important, that we feel that people are welcomed at the company, because at the end, this is what creates belonging. On the other hand, we also know that there are a lot of stories where people cannot be themselves, right? I am thinking about the position that I hold as a disability and inclusion officer. And oftentimes my clients actually tell me, well, I don't know, should I disclose my disability or not before the job interview? And of course, this is totally up to each person, how they would like to do it. I mean, legally, nobody is obliged to do that up front. And others might say, well, early disclosure isn't the best move for everyone. But unfortunately, research shows, and also the stories from my client, that if disability is mentioned beforehand, it lessens your chances to be invited to the first interview, right? Even though we all know that it's illegal to discriminate against hiring qualified individuals due to their mental or physical disability. So I would like to say, yes, we should be ourselves, because otherwise, yes, we might not feel good about it, and it's difficult to change and not to really show who you are. But unfortunately, I think that we have to remember that if we really want to do that and allow that space, we actually also need a company culture that allows people to be themselves. And I think that this question can only be answered if we actually are willing to look at our biases and also question, power, people in power, or actually question the status quo. Because, at the end, I don't know if you've seen the TED Talk by Julianne Bure. She said, well, it's easier to be who you are when you are is all around you. But if you're the only person, it might be a real burden on you, and people might not like it at all, right? So I think it's a very difficult question, and I feel like there's no right or wrong answer. But I think it really has a lot to do with, are we willing to actually open up and be a company that is really human centered, right? And also to pass on the mic to others and give others a chance. That's kind of my thought, or my take. My take on that. What do you think, Furkan? Should we ask the audience if they would like to add something to the conversation?
Yes, anyone who would like to add and share their story, please put into the react button and put your hands up, and we are going to invite you in. And so well said. If you are the only person, Naomi, it's more difficult. But as you said, there is a hint in the company's culture and cultural statements that if people are maybe, let's say, the first time joining or getting into a job, so it's difficult for them to measure, like, how can I be freely myself? Do I say about my differences from the first moment? The company culture can ease this question for them. So I think it should clearly state that everyone's differences are welcomed and everyone will be appreciated with who they are, with their uniqueness, and will be even celebrated. It's a very good message for everyone who consider joining.
And again, I think that regardless, it's very important these days that people feel valued and respected, regardless, of their struggles and what they might bring to the table, right? I mean, it's also about being human, right? And at the same time, I think if we have examples, or if we actually notice that some people might struggle, with some parts of their identity and might not be able to bring everything to the table. It's also a question for oneself, I think. When is a time to speak up, and maybe sometimes when is a time to walk away, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, these are very important points, and I think the team itself either make it more welcoming for people to be who they are as well. Sometimes the company culture could show one thing, on the other side the team might be implementing something else. So whoever you are, wherever your team is, I think you can actually make your new team members feeling more comfortable by welcoming them in an open arm, in an open statement, and making the effort to make them more comfortable as much as possible. That plays a big role in their satisfaction in the job that they are doing, and also their productivity, their performance is all related to how we work together and who do we work together. And today I used an analogy, playing a game. We're all playing a game. Our jobs are games, so it's important whom do we play the game with.
Yeah, and I think it's what you said. It reminds me of the words by John D. Kemp. He wrote a book about disability inclusion, and he said, "Well, when people can go about their day in the way that they best fits their needs, our citizenry are generally more productive and happier." Right? So, I mean, specifically when we want to, when we talk about, job retention, employee retention, it is very important that we actually make sure that people, are heard and that they feel welcomed, and I think that sometimes also it's a good idea to show up together. It's a little bit like self-care, or sometimes we talk about allyship in a group or something like that. And at the end, I think we have to try to be our best self, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be seen and to be heard. So I think it's also our responsibility, as you said at the beginning, to encourage others to actually come to the table and pass on the mic. What do you think, Furkan?
Mm-hmm. It's so important to give that space for people to open up. And when I'm inviting somebody to open up, the one thing I do is I open up first. Then they have the courage, they feel that it's not something scary to open up. Then the other person easily opens up as well. So this is something we can practice. As an introverted person, I used to always wait for others to invite me to the conversation or giving me the space to talk in the meetings before I make the initiative. So some of our extroverts, some of us are introverts, so let's keep this in mind as well. But opening up first invites the other people to open up and being a little bit more comfortable with who they are as well. So I think we have a big role in this as a team, in the invitation to demonstrate who we are, what are our values as a person. And I think it's so beautiful. What's on earth? Seriously, how does it feel to be yourself at home, at work? It's just, I think it's a wonderful feeling, and the satisfaction with what we do. I started painting, Naomi. I'm not good at painting, but it's just a little piece of masterpiece from me. Just feels like, oh, that is mine. This is what I have done. And it just feels different because it is so you in it. So the same thing applies to the products, the jobs that we do. I think if we bring that me element in it, it's even more beautiful in our eyes. It's more valued and priceless.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's nearly time to wrap up. Thanks for sharing that story with us. But it also reminds me, of a quote by Cummings. He says, "Well, it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are." So I think that's also something that should be taken into consideration. Specifically, when we have seen, for example, first generation professionals, oftentimes they feel less. That they feel like they belong less than others because their parents cannot give them as much advice because they haven't been in that position. So, it's good, for example, to open up, create mentorships, for example, and just ask for their stories, right? So they can feel that they are heard as well. And I feel like, I'm going to say some closing words before I hand over the mic to you again. I think that at the end, because both of us work in this diversity field, we should not forget that diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is a long-term commitment, right? It's not just including people in the workforce. We really have to do something, right? It's about creating accessibility as well, for all. It is a practice, right? It's not the destination. So we have to work on it every day. And I feel like it's the same with making sure that people feel welcome in our company, in the workforce, etc.
Wonderful.
Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Furkan, some last words to our audience?
Yes, we have another exciting date for you on the 23rd of April, on Tuesday. We are going to have our third session together with Dr. Noémie. We are going to be talking about inclusive language. I think many of you have so many stories in terms of inclusive language, and we are going to deep dive into the quote from Edward T. Hall, "Culture hides more than it reveals." So we are going to combine the culture with inclusive language, and so you're very welcome. Please save the date and join us again, and you will be also able to hear these sessions on YouTube later on. Thank you. It's always a pleasure, Noémie, talking to you.
Thanks so much, and have a great day to all of you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.